then your goal of meditation, before I get on to that, your goal of meditation is to unthink yourself back to that stage of consciousness where you weren't fragmenting and segmenting yourself away from it, when you were just that child experiencing all that is as a constant flow. Because you weren't aware that you were you. You weren't aware that I was I. You weren't aware of the different sounds and the different sights. They were all just an experience without words labelled toward them. So there was no verbal labels. It was just, as I say, the continuance of consciousness within you. Hey guys, so found some time to make a video, and I want to talk about consciousness, because I realized I use the word consciousness a lot in my videos, but I've never took the time to say what I believe consciousness is, or what it is in my, how I would, it's a tricky thing, consciousness, because it's nearly impossible to describe, but I want to elaborate on what I mean when I use that word. And also in doing that, I hope because lots of people keep asking me to make videos on how to meditate. My belief is that if you begin to see the goal of meditation without having to sit down and start chanting and things of this nature, then you will find the correct technique for you, and it can be completely individual. You know, going for a walk can be a meditation. If you check into walking meditation in Zen, going for a walk can be a meditation. Listening to mantras and stuff can be a meditation. Anything, any exercise can be a meditation. I know people who lift weights who get into a meditative state. Running can do it. I myself, when I run long distance, can do that. But I never used to be able to run long distance, so it hasn't always been the case. I could go into a meditative state prior to me being running long distances, let's put it that way. But walking helped me because I like to move around, you know, I like to be in the world. And this is where there's a what's the word? There's a difference. There's a difference in the types of meditation. For instance, to bring yourself into the present moment, you can have your eyes open to do that. There are other aspects of meditation. There's many a study shown that when your eyes are closed, and it's evident from dreaming, when your eyes are closed, your pineal is more active. So there's different types to do, but it's what you need at that time is not something someone can hand you on a plate. But if you understand the goal of meditation, and I wish I had time to do more videos, by the way, so I could do this in depth, but I just don't. You guys, I think, know that I just don't have time to do that. That's why I'm hesitant to start doing videos about how to meditate. I'd rather do them on, this is the goal, this is what you're aiming for, this is what you're heading toward. Because if I do that, then at least some of you might touch it or see it or understand, and then you might find the technique that works for you to get there. You might find the personalized habit or personalized task in your life that you can use to get there. If that makes, I think that would make sense to you all. So, my dog's seen something they don't like. So meditation ties in with a word I use a lot when I talk about esoterics. And I'm not going to mention esoterics in this because I think that segments myself from being able to express a lot of the time what I'm wanting to express to a lot of people, because they just see it as some sort of variation of religion, and a lot of people have had enough of religion, as I had, you know, as most people have. So consciousness and states of consciousness. If you understand the word consciousness as a collective and what that means, then then I think you will begin to grasp a lot of the stuff I talk about on every level, actually. So if consciousness, to me, is all that is. Now, the problem someone like myself is going to have trying to describe consciousness is in exactly what I've just said. Consciousness is every working of all that is. So if I describe it as this, then I'll exclude that. If I describe it as like here, then I'll exclude there. Because words are linear and life's not linear. Words are but a fragment of all that is. You know, we move, we see. There's many depths to everything: vibration and sound and light. And there's a lot more to it than words. So describing it with words is a difficult task. And this is why I said in one of my last video, actually, I think, my dog is really saying something I don't like. That this is the reason we have poets. This is the reason we have writers and singers and dancers and composers, because words fail. Words are not enough. You know, we can't describe it all with words. But this is our communication system that we use the most. For all, when we're in person, we use other aspects, as in body language and stuff like that. So consciousness is an experience of all that is. And because it's an experience of all that is, words will fail it. So if you describe it as light, you're going to exclude dark. If you describe it, as I say, as here, you're going to exclude there. If you describe it as this, you'll miss out on that. If you describe it as movement, you will neglect the state of rest. So consciousness is all that is, and describing it's a tricky thing, but it is all the workings of all that is. You are a being existing within consciousness, and the consciousness that you're existing within is eternal, and you have all touched that consciousness. You've all touched the absolute present moment of consciousness, because you were all once hello happy, you were all once children. And before, when you were children, before you learned anything, you didn't understand the difference between this and that. You didn't understand the difference between here and there. You didn't even understand the difference between you and me. You didn't know what you was, so you didn't know what you were. So you existed within the consciousness without any fragmentation from your mind. You didn't even know, as I say, the concept of you was absent from you. So your workings, your five senses, your mind, everything was just existing within consciousness. And this is where you're aiming for with meditation, is to get back to there. You're unthinking, you're unlearning, and you're getting back to that point of clarity, of purity that you had when you were a child, that you see in a child's eyes now. Not an older child, a very young child. A child that, as I say, you learn things you don't even realize you've learned. Very important things like the definition of sorry, there was a spider. The definition of you, how you define you. There was a point in this existence where you didn't know what you was. So you didn't know this was you experiencing this reality. There was no separation. You didn't know you were experiencing reality. So what were you back then? You were merely a continuance of reality into your five senses. It was a continuance. You weren't you experiencing reality because you didn't know who you were. So you were merely a continuance of consciousness before your brain fragmented the information that comes into you and made you the you that you are that's experiencing reality. I hope some of you can grasp what I've just said there. Because if you can see that, then you can aim for that again. And when you can get there again, then you can touch the vast expanse of consciousness that I refer to. And when you can understand the vast expanse of consciousness that you once were experiencing, not as yourself, but merely as a receptor to consciousness, before you understood the difference between yourself and another person, and the differentiation of sounds that were coming to you. They were just, you didn't even know they were sounds. They were just experiences within your five senses when you were a child. Once you can get back to there, or you can aim to get to there, then you can understand, when I use the term consciousness, exactly what consciousness is, because you can experience it directly. Because words will never describe it. I can't describe it with words. I can't do it, as I've said, because I'll always describe it as this, and when I do that, I exclude that. As light, I'll exclude dark, and it's always the same with words. But when you feel it and experience it, then you will grasp it, and you can start to learn about it and from it. And that ties into other things that I say. If you can learn about it and from it, then your goal of meditation, before I get on to that, your goal of meditation is to unthink yourself back to that stage of consciousness where you weren't fragmenting and segmenting yourself away from it, when you were just that child experiencing all that is as a constant flow. Because you weren't aware that you were you. You weren't aware that I was I. You weren't aware of the different sounds and the different sights. They were all just an experience without words labelled toward them. So there was no verbal labels. It was just, as I say, the continuance of consciousness within you. And when you see that, you begin to understand that, for instance, I'm looking at a tree now, that without the consciousness that is within sentient life, that sees the tree and describes the tree, there's always the idea that then reality is not experiencing itself in the most in-depth of ways. If it were just a planet of trees, as it once was, then the evolution and the creation of conscious life like ourselves then allows consciousness to experience its other creations in a different way. So when you can touch that, when you can touch consciousness and you can understand consciousness, it ties into the other things I say. Because I talk about the idea that people manipulate consciousness. People do manipulate consciousness. There are technologies on your planet that can manipulate what I've just spoke about. But not necessarily the whole, but the segmented, fragmented aspects of it. So if you've got a universal aspect of consciousness, and then you've got a global consciousness, then within the global consciousness you have earth consciousness. Within global consciousness you have like a country's consciousness, a nationality's consciousness. So I can use the UK as an example because I'm from the UK and I've lived within the UK consciousness. So you have this collective, then you have this smaller aspect, the UK consciousness. And let's describe the UK consciousness as your awareness of you and the collective yous within there. So when you understand that from the very beginning, I think I might confuse people here, from the very beginning you have pure consciousness, and then you have human beings fragmenting and segmenting consciousness until they create the concept of the you or the me of who they are. Then you can understand that collectively, if you can influence the things that they learn along the way on their journey from that initial pure consciousness that is just experiencing reality without any words or any labels, if you can work out exactly what will be learned and what will be fragmented, then consciousness becomes a material that can be manipulated and shifted. So you have persons living inside a country like the UK, and a brilliant example of this is politics. If you understand that your consciousness, and you understand that you're a conscious being, and others understand it too, and they understand the workings of how consciousness, of how you became fragmented from the original pure consciousness, then they can control the fragmented aspects of you. So the collective UK consciousness, the collection of yous who view the world in a certain way, can be maneuvered in the right direction. And politics is a brilliant example. Politics is not about legislation. We know this. Politics is not about what guy can say that. Politics is never about that, because a person can say something and change what they've said, as we see all the time. They say stuff and then they change their minds, they change their ideas, they change their agendas. This is what happens. Politics is very simply put, if you can touch that position of clear consciousness, you'll see this. Politics is about how the collective consciousness of the UK reacts to a character presented to them with media which not necessarily has been designed to maneuver the collective consciousness, but can maneuver the collective consciousness. Technology that can influence the minds of the collective by presenting a character. And then that consciousness, that collective that is the human public, the UK public, will then react in a certain way to the information or the character presented to them. That is what politics is about. You know this. You vote for the person who you react positively to in the media. Politics is not about legislation. Politics is about how your consciousness and all the other yous, which are fragmented aspects of the same consciousness, respond to something presented to them within the media. Newspapers, TV, all of this technology that allows that to happen. So if you understand that that's how consciousness works, and you understand that consciousness can be maneuvered in a certain way, that's a funny sentence, but I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm using the word consciousness a lot. But if you understand that, then you must realise that if politics is merely about how the reaction of the collective goes towards someone in media, that is the goal. And if the people, the collective, respond to them in a positive light, you're going to benefit from it greatly, because you're going to get the right person in power to allow you to expand your resources, your wealth, your power. You're going to get the right sort of prime minister or president who's going to go with your agendas and take you to war if you're part of the super elite. Then arguably that are going to go with your legislation, let's put it that way, instead of being as dramatic as saying war. Surely you can see that all that matters is the character that you present and how they present themselves. Now, as technology goes on and as time progresses, if the elite on the planet are as intelligent as they must be, and if they've come to the realization, based on what I understand of their spiritual belief systems, such as the ends justify the means, which is something a society that one of the prime ministers of the UK was a member of go by, you must then surely understand that it is of importance, if it's of such importance that the collective, that is the UK consciousness, responds to what is said to them in the media, then allows you to get your leader in power, then surely you can see that if you were elite, you're not planning on being elite for your heirs to come, your next generations, your dynasty. You could quite easily ensure that certain persons who have the same belief as you, that it doesn't matter what is said, it doesn't matter if you lie, are then created to be the perfect spokesperson to have consciousness respond in the way that you want it to respond. For the collective to respond well to a person, you could teach them to be an actor. You could teach them to lie. You could teach them to say the things that you know that the collective want to hear. And if you were so powerful and wealthy that you owned data mining and you could collect statistics and data information on everybody all over the planet all the time, you could even know what they needed to say. You know, it's as simple as that. But all of that ties into one thing. Being able to come all the way back to that point within yourself where you've unthought everything and you come back to that initial consciousness you were. You come back to the purity that you were as a child before you learned the identity of you. What were you experiencing before you knew you were you? You were still experiencing reality. So were you living in reality? No, you weren't. You were an expression of something. You were the receptor of the reality around you. And that in itself is a fabric of workings. That in itself is almost a science, dare I say. And understanding it is difficult. I know it is, and I know I've probably confused a lot of people with this. But remember that your goal is to get back to that point of consciousness. And however you learn to do that in your own personal way, it'll be what's best for you and what suits you best. So, and when you can touch that, you become safe from others that already have. Because not everyone who touches it comes back with a positive and beautifying worldview. Sadly, some of them come back with an immoral and immature worldview, where they want to use that experience to manipulate others that are yet to feel it, or to yet to realize it. And every spiritual text spoke about this. It's just you need to look beyond the mainstream, as I often say. If you read the Nag Hammadi, there's a one called the Infancy Gospel, which is quite an interesting book because it's about Jesus when he was a boy causing trouble. What they were saying was his consciousness was immature. It's an allegory of the fact he was immature in his spiritual practice. So he was misusing the power that was bestowed upon him. And that's what you see in modern day society with these organized, powerful, elite families and dynasties that follow these and know this spiritual knowledge. They are immature because they have not learned it through the correct means, or they've learned it from someone who has a tainted view of it. So that's my little bit on consciousness and meditation. If you're going to meditate, your goal is to unthink everything and come back to the purity that you were before you knew you were you, but were still existing and conscious within your five senses. But you weren't you, because there was a point on this planet before you knew you were even you. You didn't even know you were you at some point when you were alive. That means you didn't know you were you breathing, you didn't know you were you reaching out and touching. You didn't know you were you looking at light, you didn't even know what a light was. It was just all stuff happening to you without labels. Aim for there. However it is you can find it, aim for there. And if you're looking for good meditation teachings, I don't have time, sadly, to be a meditation teacher. But I do believe that the universe has all the time in the world to teach you. So if you set an intention to aim for that, you will undoubtedly be brought the best tools for you to get there on a personal level. That is what I believe. Okay, I'm going to get off because I'm hungry and I need to eat. Okay, bye guys.